Guys, after subscribing to this channel, please make sure that you also press the bell icon so that no notification, no new video of mine, any educational video, is missed by anybody.
Let's begin, guys. So let me show you your first slide. Have a look at this and then I'll show you the questions. And your time starts now. Welcome the new participants in the class, and guys, everybody is writing down the answers. I would expect you also to just grab a pen and paper and quickly write down the answers and send it to me. Okay, I'll be seeing the chat group. I would want everyone to answer in the chat, and to enter the chat room, guys, you'll have to go back to the main group and just click on the pinned message and you'll be able to enter the chat room. All right. Keep answering, guys. 2 minutes. Just 1 minute more is left. Mechanism of action of the drug. So carbetocin is a long-acting oxytocin that binds to oxytocin receptors. So it's one of the oxytocin analogs. Okay, just like you have your syntocin, the same way you have carbetocin as well. It's one of the oxytocin analogs. So it works by the same principle. It binds to the oxytocin receptors and it stimulates the rhythmic contractions. It leads to the tone and contraction. Correct? Okay, one answer do I have with me. Then the question is about onset of action of carbetocin via the IV route. It starts very quick. Okay, it starts within 1 to 2 minutes. And how long does it remain? The question, IV, it stays on to roughly around 1 hour, and intramuscular it stays on for a little more. So it stays on for, let's say, 1.5 to 2 hours. Okay, it can be a little bit time difference here and there, but mostly this is what it is. Yeah, that's right. Pretty much if you've written down the same thing, good. Then the question is about advantages of carbetocin over oxytocin. So it's got a longer duration of action and it's more stable in the storage. That's what you've also written down. It's heat stable, long shelf life, and it's more longer duration of action, correct? Then two side effects of carbetocin. Hypotension it can cause nausea, vomiting, and just like oxytocin can cause an antidiuretic effect. Okay. Then shall we go to the next question, guys? So here's your slide. So I'm really sorry for these blotchy pictures, but again, this is not my fault. This was the way in which my students have given me the slides. I can't help it. I'll try to just maybe, I hope it's not getting even worse by this. Anyways, have a look at this picture and then answer these questions. Your time starts now, guys. So who all I have in the class today? Shrishti, are you answering? Rohan, Ranjani, Jigar, Sujata, please answer everyone. Bhavna, Laksh, Usha is there, very good. Drishti, Pavi, Shahina, Alpana, please answer, okay? Let it be a wrong answer, it doesn't matter. Just answer. Okay, nobody's judging you over here. Most of the time, I don't even read all the answers. Okay, and I don't even see who has answered. So just try to answer. Okay. Yeah, it's a difficult question, and I'll show you the slide once more. It is a question which even I found difficult to answer because first of all, the image was so blotchy. The questions were so ambiguous. Okay, so I've done my best. Now let's see what you guys have to say about this. What are you writing down? Now let's discuss regarding this slide. So, like I said, it's a very blotchy slide, and even I found it difficult to answer. But still, I've tried to figure out what it could be because this is the kind of question they'll ask you. They'll not be asking you some very high funda questions, and you don't have to decipher a lot in the X-ray because that's not your job. But since the X-ray has come, they'll be usually asking you for such a hazy X-ray in which they'll be probably talking about the signs of pulmonary edema or bronchovascular markings and stuff. Now, list 3 possible reasons. So this is a first of all, what's the background? The 25-year-old female is there. She's primary, 32 weeks, and she's a known case of rheumatic heart disease with MS. Okay, and she's presenting in the casualty with what? Breathlessness at rest. So her echo has shown severe mitral stenosis, and what happens in severe mitral stenosis? Pulmonary edema, and she also has pulmonary arterial hypertension. So what could it be? The 3 possible reasons for her breathlessness, what it could be is pulmonary arterial hypertension itself is breathlessness causing because it results in a lot of, dyspnea, okay? Because it increases the left arterial pressure. Just imagine it has to force the blood inside. So it automatically, the left atrial pressure also increases. Because of that, also you have pulmonary edema. So pulmonary edema is definitely one real reason. So narrowing of the mitral valve increases left atrial pressure, leading to pulmonary congestion, edema. That is definitely one thing. Then just anterior, this is just one more way of saying it. Then there is obviously increased blood volume during pregnancy. Pregnancy also leads to dyspnea on exertion. So that could be one reason. Then chest X-ray. What are the chest X-ray findings? So there is probably a left atrial enlargement because of, mitral stenosis, and there is pulmonary venous congestion. Then these are the findings which are consistent of severe MS along with pulmonary congestion. Usually what happens is that if there is a mitral stenosis there is backflow because it's not able to force inside that narrow. Just imagine if there is bottlenecking. Don't you have traffic jam behind? It's exactly the same way. If the lane is through and through wide, you'll have no problem. But if the lane was earlier, this big, and then it narrows down to that level that is, finding difficult for, one car also to go, then you'll have traffic jam for a very long distance, and that is it. Yes, that's a good answer, Bhavna. You can say that. Yeah, definitely. You will have, whenever you have this kind of congestion anywhere, you're having problem in forcing the blood again, you can have atrial fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation leading to dyspnea, not so much, but atrial fibrillation, you can say. I mean, there is no other reason. They're asking for 3 reasons. Even I could not figure out 3 reasons. Most important and only reason which I could figure out is the pulmonary edema because of severe mitral stenosis and backflow. The other thing which could be is just because pregnancy is a hemodynamic state, and it can also lead to dyspnea on exertion, physiological. Otherwise, fibrillation, you can say, if there is fibrillation, then only, of course. Echo is not showing any fibrillation, but it's okay. You can write down because there's no other answer. Clinical impression based on the chest X-ray is that there is pulmonary edema, most probably due to severe mitral stenosis and also because of pulmonary arterial hypertension. This can cause acute heart failure because there's so much of, afterload and preload to be tolerated. Okay, and yes, of course, it can start with atrial fibrillation, but it can encompass the entire heart because you have there are 2 places where you're having a real problem. Is that, see, one is the pulmonary artery, one is the pulmonary veins, correct? So just imagine that there is pulmonary arterial hypertension also, and you also have mitral stenosis. So these 2 things are causing severe problem, and because of that, the flow towards the body is being severely compromised. In fact, the backflow is increasing. So that will definitely be a problem for the patient in terms of acute heart failure, in terms of pulmonary edema, in terms of venous thromboembolism. correct? And of course, you need percutaneous mitral valvotomy. And with this, I go on to the next question, if you permit me, guys. If you've got any questions in between, please feel free to ask me right now. Shall I go? Shall I go further in our questions? Okay, the next question is this. All right, guys. The time is up. Let's discuss this. Is pretty easy question, and I have already taken your class on this onco topic, which is I've taken it in every onco lecture. I have done a pre-cancerous or pre-malignant lesions and then malignancies, pre-malignancies and malignancies, almost everything. And every time, especially for ovarian carcinoma, I had taken the pre-malignant lesions and the germ cell tumors separately. Guys, please, everybody who's got my live class recordings, please go ahead and watch the onco folder. It's beautiful. Okay, I mean, it's very well made in the sense that I've tried to manage things very exam oriented and practical way, so that you're able to understand the topic also, and you're able to write down in the exams as well. So everything which is latest, including the latest FIGO guidelines, the latest FIGO staging, everything is included in the live class recording folder. So everybody who keeps asking me, ma'am, in oncology, I'm not able to see oncology, so I tell them, go see the live class recording. Oncology is there in your regular classes as well, but I did not update it because I already used the updated lectures in the in the live class recording. So live class recording is a recent one, and the notes are the little older. Okay, 1 year, 2 year difference. So always when you have a doubt of seeing the latest, go and see the live class recordings because they are the latest ones, right? 7-year-old girl, vaginal bleeding, development of secondary sexual characteristics. Ultrasound reveals a complex ovarian mass, has to be a granulosa cell tumor, because that is the one which secretes estrogen and is responsible for peripheral precocious puberty. Okay. List 2 investigations you would want to advise. This also I had told you. So this is the granulosa, the germ cell tumor. It's a sex called stromal tumor. It produces the estrogen. Then what investigations will you do? You'll definitely do the estrogen levels. You'll definitely do the inhibin levels, because inhibin level A and B is very, very categoric of granulosa cell tumor. And apart from that, you want to kind of be sure that it's not any other germ cell tumor. So in that case, you will go ahead and do AFP, beta HCG, and LDH, which I always ask you to do for all the probable germ cell tumors of the young age. Now, what is the treatment? The treatment usually is a unilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, staging and histopathological examination, and if required, chemotherapy. Let the onco-gynecologist decide, or the oncologist decide, but all you have to tell as in consent to the patient will be, most probably it's a pre-malignant lesion, but we'll understand it only once we open the abdomen. So take the consent of, laparotomy or laparoscopic surgery for salpingo-oophorectomy and staging of the disease. Prognosis is usually good if it's diagnosed early. Regular follow-up is required, and usually when you say for a follow-up, it's like 3 to 6 months for the first 2 years. 3 to 6 months for, let's say, the first 2 years. Then the next 2 years, at least 6 months, and after that, yearly for life. But that's mostly for carcinoma. For germ cell tumors, it could be 3 to 6 monthly for 2 years, and again 6 months for the next 2 years, and then maybe 1 year for 5 years. That you can say. There was one thing which I wanted to tell you. Yeah, usually granulosa cell tumors, they've got a very slow growth rate and they've got good surgical outcome. The girl, wait a second, if the girl had a normal abdominal ultrasound, which important investigations would you advise? If she had a normal abdominal ultrasound, then what do you think you would want to do? Suppose this girl had similar features. Okay, she's having bleeding per vaginum, and she's not having anything in the ultrasound. Then the other thing which I would think of is a central precocious puberty. So in that case, I'll do an MRI brain and maybe a GnRH stimulation test, because there are certain gonadotropin dependent and gonadotropin independent. You'll be able to differentiate the difference between the two. GnRH stimulation, that means you are mimicking the central organ, that is the hypothalamus pituitary. Correct. But if it is not responding to that phase, that means there's nothing wrong with the central. It is actually the peripheral system which has gone wrong, right? So this case suggests precocious puberty due to an ovarian hormone secreting tumor, but you can also have a central precocious puberty for which you can do these two tests, MRI brain and GNRS stimulation tests. Okay.